Playing with fonts is some of my favorite things to do in Photoshop. So in this tutorial, we're going to continue in that theme, and I'm going to metalize some text. I'm going to create a new layer. This is a 12-inch by 12-inch document here. And I'm going to select the Type Mask tool. That's the one with the marching ants around it over here in the toolbar. And I'm just going to enter some text. Let me zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on here. I'm going to select a basic gradient. It's white to black, just a standard gradient. Well, it's normally the black to white gradient, as you see here, but I have reverse checked up here in the options bar. So white should start out at the top, and I'm going to draw it down to the bottom of the selection. Now I'm going to create a new layer beneath that layer. And again, I'm going to draw my gradient. This time I'm going from the bottom to the top. I'm going to deselect. And that bottom layer, I'm just going to use the arrow keys to move it just a hair. Okay, like 1 pixel to the left, 1 pixel to the right. If I go 2, we just deepen that effect. Almost gives it a little bit of a 3D quality. But that's not what I wanted to show you per se. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start playing with that initial type layer. I'm going to open up the layer styles, this little FX right here, and I'm going to start with bevel and emboss. I'm going to first uncheck use global light. And I might change this altitude to something like, let's say 25 for starters. Up here in the technique, I'm going to leave it at inner bevel, but I'm going to change the technique to chisel hard. And I'm going to increase the size of that bevel until all these ridges meet in the center. My highlight mode I'm going to leave alone. I'm going to leave the white as my highlight color, but I'm going to change my shadow color to something else. Maybe a nice blue or a turquoise. We can go red, we can go whatever we want. Any color will work, just so long as it's not black or white. I'm going to tweak the gloss contour a bit by opening up that contour, and I'm just going to start manipulating here. And this is just going to give some character to our reflections. I'll click OK. I'm going to actually select the contour, and I'm not even going to play with it. I'm not going to change anything except to check anti-aliased. Of course, we can move this around a little bit. Maybe I'll lower that range here, because that gives us a little better reflection on our text. Let me click OK and zoom in so we can take a better look at what's going on here. So now we get these nice beveled edges. Of course, we have some things going on there caused by that chisel hard setting that makes it look like it's tooled somewhat. Once I have initial style that I'm happy with, I can just go ahead and save that layer style by opening up the Styles palette and click New Style, and now that'll save it to the palette with just those settings. And now I can add or subtract to or from those settings. For instance, let's try a gradient overlay and just see what that gives us. Here's a nice metallic style gradient. Here's our copper gradient, rainbow gradients and stuff like that. You can get pretty wild with this, actually. I like the slightly more subtle ones myself. For instance, this metallic gradient, I'll select it. I'll just alter the blending modes a bit. For instance, soft light is going to make it very faint, and opacity is going to help me out even more. Might want to change the angle on that as well. You can increase or decrease the scale as needed, or reverse it. Very subtle changes. That's what I'm looking for. If I go back to the copper gradient, then of course, might want to increase the opacity a bit when we're in soft light, just so we can get that character coming out of there. Something else we can do, let me turn off that gradient there, is apply a pattern. Now this is one of the default ones that came with Photoshop. But for instance, let's say you've defined a metallic or rusty type pattern image for a pattern. You simply go to pattern overlay and apply that. Or it's like a rusty background. Now it gets pretty cool looking. I don't necessarily want that to totally wipe out the other things that I've put in there. So I can reduce the opacity. Again, we can go ahead and alter the blending mode. Soft light, we get those shadows and things like that from the gradient peeking through, and we just get a hint of color of this pattern. If I were to go to overlay, it becomes a little bit more defined, but we still get that gradient showing through in the background. Let me click OK. If I don't want that initial edge that I created with that secondary layer, I can simply turn that off. Another option that you have is to add a stroke, and I don't want a really bold red or even a color stroke. I'm going to change my fill type to gradient, and I'm going to change the style to shape burst. Now we can really highlight the edges on that. That black gradient really doesn't do it for me. But I can add a little copper. Again, reduce the opacity. Just give it a faint glow if I want. Increase the size however we like. Something else we can do is we can use that pattern that we use to overlay this text as the stroke. Okay. Now let's say I place it inside, and now we actually get this little haloed edge around the inside of this metallic text. Once I'm satisfied with it, I can click New Style, and those settings are forever saved for use later. And I really wanted to show this effect on a black background because it really makes it stand out, but of course you can use this on any type of background that you like. Now that I've saved that layer style, I would like to demonstrate that you can use this again on basically anything you like. So I'm going to just select one of these default arrow layer styles. I'm going to go ahead and just draw that out, open up my layer styles. That last one I created is right down here at the bottom, even though I drew this in black and you can't see it. Of course, it's on a black background. Once I apply the layer style, though, boink, there it is. Okay. Now, why would this all be black? Well, because initially we filled that with a gradient. Remember, it was a selection, not just a shape. But we can change that really quick by simply generating a selection, holding down the controller command key and clicking on the shape. Going to our gradient and drawing it in. Now you'll note it didn't go over the top of the layer style, it went beneath and the layer style was applied to it. As we zoom all the way into 100%, you see our arrow is nice and pointy and sharp, just like the text. And that's it for this effect. I hope you enjoyed it.